Hi, and welcome to our second learning series session of 2025. My name is Pearl LaCourciere, and I work in the Office of Good Government as the Training Education Coordinator here at the North Dakota State Auditor's Office. As you are all likely well aware, the state of North Dakota just finished up with the 69th legislative session. In this year, over 1,000 bills were introduced. Of that 1,000, just over 500 were signed into law by the governor. So we're here today to inform you about these new laws and how they could affect you. There will be a Q&A at the end. Please use the Q&A button located in the top right corner next to the lead button. We will answer those at the end. Also, just a note, there is a document that I attached to the email yesterday that was sent out with notes that reference the bills that we will be talking about. Also, that document will be posted in the chat if you were not able to access those yesterday. Today, updating you on the bills pertinent to your districts are Dan Cox and State Auditor Josh Gallion. Dan is the Director of Audit Services here at the State Auditor's Office. He is responsible for ensuring our own audits and audits done by private firms meet government standards. He oversees the quality of the audits of the state agencies, the university system, and all local governments across the state. Dan has worked for the North Dakota State Auditor's Office for over 25 years and is a CPA. State Auditor Josh Gallion was elected in 2016 to serve as North Dakota's 17th state auditor. He served in the United States Air Force at the Minot Air Force Base from 1998 to 2002. His education includes an associate degree from Bismarck State College, Bachelor of Science degrees in Accounting and Business Administration from Dickinson State University, and a Master of Business Administration degree from the University of North Dakota. So without further ado, we have a lot of topics and bills to cover today. I'm going to hand it over to Josh and Dan.
All right, before we get started, I just thought I'd quick mention that this is not an exclusive list. I have tried to add as many of the different bills as possible that I thought would affect local governments, but just wanted you to know that there may be others out there as well in different areas that also could affect you. One other thing is, I don't want to give a disclaimer. This is not meant to be any kind of legal advice or anything like that on how these bills should apply, but we just wanted to bring them to your awareness and to your attention so that you could look into them further and decide how they might apply to you. And so with that, we'll go through them in numerical order.
Well, and I just want to reiterate, again, this is more of an introduction of some things that we uncovered. We will try to do a Q&A, but at the end, we may not have all of the answers. These bills that are being implemented by other organizations, they may be in the process of developing their procedures, the steps or the applications for some of these funds. We will do our best to answer those questions, but in the end, it may be we refer you to talk to those specific state agencies. All right, we ready to get going, Dan?
We're ready.
We got a lot of stuff to cover.
Let's start with our own.
House Bill 1004. That is the North Dakota State Auditor's Office appropriation bill. We did make some good changes in this bill. Our report review is for small governments. These are the reports that are submitted to our office for those with revenue under $2 million. Before, those were special funded positions, meaning that we had to charge a service for those entities. The individuals that are doing that work this session were converted to general funds, which means we no longer have to bill or charge for those services. That's going to be a tremendous benefit to local governments at every corner of the state of North Dakota, and we are excited for that change. And then this will also enable us to spend more time answering questions, assisting and supporting the training and education component of completing these reports. So I think it's a great change, Dan, and I'm excited for this to be implemented here this next biennium.
Right, and just to expound on that a little bit more, because as Josh mentioned, we have more time to be able to put into these basic reviews. We have made some changes to that basic review process that I wanted to kind of talk you through right now. And this affects a lot of the local governments. There are over 1,500 local governments in the state, and over 1,000 of them are available to be able to do this review process because they receive less than that $2 million in annual revenue. So this affects the majority of you out there. So our basic review process, as was mentioned, is for those that have annual revenue of less than $2 million. Now, there is a caveat to that, and that comes in with federal spending. So if any given year you spend more than $750,000 in federal money, you are required to get a single audit by per the federal government. And that single audit requires basically that you get an audit. So even if you're under that 2 million, but you spend more than 750,000 in federal money, you still have to get an audit. So the other thing to point out is that this is an annual financial report review. That means that whereas an audit can be done every 2 years, this report has to be submitted annually for that review. Now, when we do this basic review, we look at 4 primary areas. And the first is that the numbers on the report that you submit, and we have that template out on our website that you can find out there, but those numbers need to reflect what's in your accounting records. So in essence, this is basically a tie-out process. We look to see that what's on your books matches what's in the bank. So these reports are meant to be cash basis statements. Now, your accounting records may or may not be cash basis statements. You may be a modified cash, which a lot of these accounting systems are. And that just simply means that you're recording revenues or receivables and payables, items like that. So if that's the case, again, we make whatever adjustments are necessary to make sure that the numbers that are on your books match the numbers that are in the bank statement. So in doing this, if they do not, what we're doing now is to identify specifically what is missing. And this is something before where we were just given a plug number and moving forward. Now we're actually tracking down what's missing. Were there revenues that not recorded? Were there expenditures that weren't recorded? And once we isolate what those are, then the adjustment that we give you to make to your books is an actual true adjustment number that you can make to your books so that the numbers tie out the way they're supposed to. The second main thing that we look at is that the funds are used correctly. Now, in this scenario, the primary funds are your general fund, which all local governments have a general fund. All activity can run through that. Then there are also special revenue funds. Now, special revenue funds are those funds that have a restriction placed on them. And that restriction can be from several different areas. It could be a restriction that came from Century Code, such as the Highway Fund, specifically states those monies must be set aside and can only be used for a specific purpose. It could be because of the federal government. If you get a grant, oftentimes those also have restrictions. Or finally, it could be because of board action. Either your city council or your board restricts monies for a particular purpose. That could also be a reason to have a special revenue fund. Now, capital project funds and debt service funds, those typically go together when you take out bonds for large capital projects. And so the monies to both do the project as well as pay back the bond issuance, those would go in their own separate funds. And finally, there are enterprise funds. And think of this as at a city would be your water, sewer, garbage typically. And those don't necessarily have to be separate. They could be combined into what's called a municipal utility fund. So that's the other thing we look at, again, just to make sure that the funds are used correctly. Next, we look at negative fund balances. Are there negative fund balances that you have that, for whatever reason, exist? We look to see why is that fund negative, because typically you do not want to see your funds have negative fund balances. And then finally, we look at transfers. Not only on whether or not the transfers are done correctly, there are a lot of restrictions on transfers, as in how much you can transfer out of certain funds, but as well, there are also restrictions on what funds you can or cannot make transfers out of. So the financial statements, one other thing I would mention is that the financial statements, we used to prepare for those that didn't have that information together. We used to prepare them out of your bank statements, and we are no longer doing that. We need some kind of financial record, profit and loss statement, something from your system in order to do that. Doing it from your bank records just doesn't work. It's too difficult to tell what fund it should have come from. So there also was, beyond the basic review process, there was an extended review. But now, as Josh mentioned, we have more time to spend on these and getting the numbers right. a lot of the elements that used to be in that extended review will now be incorporated into the basic review. And so it can still, out of that basic review, we may still end up doing an extended review at some point, but now it's only when the risk warrants that needs to be done. Extra testing needs to happen, whether that's with your expenditures or your payroll, laws and regulations, or your budget. That if the situation arises, we would do it at that point in time. And finally, the last change I wanted to mention is that we are now issuing a report. Instead of like the one-page letter you got before, we're actually issuing a report. It's got a basic review summary. It lists what we did, what we found, as well as a summary. There's a one-page summary financial statements. So even if you have like multiple special revenue funds, they all get rolled together into one column in your financial report, and each fund type has its own column. So it's just a summary. It's a nice summary that you can have that shows all of your financial activity for the year. As well, we include a long-term debt table. And then finally, there is a comments letter. One of the things we're looking at doing for the future is to have a virtual queue on the website. And that way you could look up and see whereabouts the report you submitted is in the review process. So just wanted to kind of update you on some of those review changes that are necessary, not necessary, but that we can now do to benefit you guys to make sure that your records are accurate. Now that we don't have to worry about spending the extra time and incurring a fee that we charge you, because as Josh mentioned, there's no longer a fee for this service.
Thanks, Dan. A lot of information, a lot of good stuff. We've made some tremendous changes, and we're very appreciative of the legislature for supporting our desire to make these adjustments to our internal procedures that will have a positive impact to local governments across the state. The next bill we want to talk about, House Bill 1012. This is the Department of Health and Human Services appropriation bill. This is a lengthy appropriation bill. It's 18 pages long. The section that we really want to bring to your attention, section 18, and this is the Department of Health and Human Services, was appropriated $7 million in grant money for rural ambulance districts. It's just, we want to make you aware, if you aren't, this might be an appropriation bill that you should go out and take a look at. And then if there are questions, reaching out to the Department of Health and Human Services to find out what those processes are and what the allowance or what the program is going to entail. So again, just to make you aware of House Bill 1012 if you aren't already.
Next up is House Bill 1013, and this is the appropriation bill for the Department of Public Instruction. And in there they were given, and this is directed, well, the first part of this is directed towards public libraries. In their bill, they were given $1.7 million in grant money for aid to public libraries. And no more information in the bill other than that. So again, as was mentioned before, you could contact the agency and find out what stipulations or criteria they have for giving that money out. But if you are a public library, you might want to check and make sure you look into that. As well, for school districts and special education districts, Department of Public Instruction was given $800,000 to be distributed to school districts and special education units for gifted and talented programs upon the submission of an application that is improved in accordance with the guidelines adopted by the Department of Public Instruction. And they've done this in other years too, but again, just wanted to bring it to your attention that money is available again this year, has been appropriated as well. And we'll touch on it in some other bills later, but Department of Public Instruction has a lot of related bills that have to do with the foundation aid payment and how that money goes out to all school districts. Okay.
All right. So I'm on to.
Oh, so I guess I'm up next, actually.
You go twice in a row, Dan.
I do. Okay. So next one up is House Bill 1106. And this is for cities, more indirect than direct, but the Department of Transportation was given $2 million to provide grants to non-fixed public transportation providers. So non-fixed means not your normal city bus routes, but those other busing services that do pickup services. And specifically, this is to help those transportation providers that service individuals with disabilities in your communities. And so this is just additional grant money to try and help them keep that cost down for being able to provide those transportation services to those people that have difficulty getting around, either because of disability or age or whatever. So if you have busing services in your city, you might want to make sure that they are aware of these monies that are available to them.
All right, the next bill we want to bring to your attention, House Bill 1139. This does affect North Dakota Century Code 57-39.2-04. It was introduced by Representative Pyle, and this relates to fire departments or fire districts that are certified under North Dakota Century Code 18-04-02 and registered as a 501c3. Purchases made for the purpose of providing fire protection services are now included in the list of exemptions from sales tax. All fire districts, regardless of how they were organized, will now be treated the same for making these purchases. So again, for tax exempt list of from sales tax, this now affects or supports the fire district. So if you are making purchases, paying sales tax, make sure you take a look at that bill and make sure that you are following up or asking questions about that process, because you are now included in the list of exemptions from sales tax.
Next up is House Bill 1176. And if there's any one number that a lot of you know for House or for bill numbers, it's probably this one. Everybody knew this one was coming. The governor talked about it at the beginning, and this is the property tax relief bill. So this one is probably the most impactful of all of these to a lot of you out there. And basically it affects all local governments. Any political subdivision that is empowered to levy a tax is affected by House Bill 1176. So as I mentioned, this is the property tax bill. So the basic premise of the bill, and this one is 43 pages, I believe. It's a big one. But the basic premise is this, that property taxes levied in dollars by a taxing district may not exceed the greater of the base year levy increased by the allowable percentage limit. Okay, so let me repeat that. So the base year levy cannot be increased by more than the allowable percentage limit. So let's break that down a little bit. The base year levy is the highest amount of property taxes levied in dollars by a taxing district in the 3 years preceding this current taxable year. So if you look back over the last 3 years, whatever your highest property tax levy over those 3 years are, that's considered now your base. And the allowable percentage limit, and everybody's already heard this number, that's 3%. So that's the most that you can increase year over year is 3%. And that's the part that I'm sure is giving most of you the angst and how to make this work. But a taxing district, a couple of things I want to throw out there, though, is that a taxing district may carry forward an excess percentage increase to be used in any of the 5 subsequent or succeeding taxable years, but it can only be used once. So as a simple example, if this next year, the amount of money that you need only equates to a 2% increase, that extra 1% that you did not utilize, you can carry forward into a subsequent year, and that year may have in effect, a 4% increase because they average out to that 3. So that's just a very simplified version of how that works. And again, you'll want to consult with your whatever attorney you have available to you on exactly how all this breaks down for you. But again, another thing there is that 3%, there are several exclusions to that 3%. So you want to look that up in the law as well. The 2 primary ones that would have come up most often or affect most entities out there. One is that taxes that are levied to pay for bonds or other forms of indebtedness are not considered part of this. So that's a separate item. And as well, there is also an exclusion if you get approval by the electors of the taxing district to go above the 3%. That also can happen. So in order for that, you have to have a majority of the qualified electors can approve a taxing district to impose a property tax levy exceeding the limitation for 4 taxable years at a time. So it can be for a 4-year period of time. The ballot measure is very specific, though. It must state the proposed percentage increase and the proposed dollar amount increase that exceeds that limitation. So that way the citizens have to be crystal clear on exactly how much more taxes that might result from the increase in the budget, by how much that budget increases. And then one last thing to note is that a city or a county may not supersede or modify the application of this law under home rule authority, which kind of stands to reason.
Excellent. Good stuff, Dan. Thanks. House Bill 1197 is our next bill that we want to bring to your attention. This is related to correctional facilities. It was introduced, the prime sponsor was Representative Freilich. Legislative management shall study regional correctional facilities, including their current and projected infrastructure needs, as well as their costs and benefits. So that's something that we want to make sure that local governments out there are aware of, that there is a study that's going to be happening by legislative management. So pay attention to that, and hopefully we'll follow how that goes through the interim and what comes out of it going into next session.
House Bill 1198, which affects park districts, and this also makes a change to North Dakota Century Code 40-49-12. This bill was introduced by Representative Worry, and this has to do with purchasing, and it opens up the purchasing field tremendously for park districts. So park districts are now able to participate in cooperative purchasing contracts with OMB in accordance with North Dakota Century Code 54-44.4. Additionally, park districts can also participate in a cooperative purchasing contract with another state for the purpose of cooperative purchasing. So this is especially helpful for those that are on border communities along that line. And again, park districts can also enter a joint power agreement with any other political subdivision of the state for the purpose of cooperative purchasing. Most likely this would be like with your city, whatever park district, whatever city the park district resides in, you can now do that. So this really opens up the field for park districts to really be able to take advantage of pricing out there, especially for large ticket items, to get better deals on those.
Well, and utilizing those cooperative purchase agreements, it's going to save time. Dan, from doing the RFPs and the procurement process. So it's going to really streamline their ability to obtain the necessary items they need to provide the services.
And that's a valid point too, because a lot of the bidding requirements, you don't have to worry about those if you're using these purchasing agreements. Moving on to House Bill 1214. And this is for school districts. And this is one of several bills, and there will be another one that I'll mention as well, besides Department of Public Instruction's own appropriation bill that affects changes to the payments that the school districts get every year from the state. And this one specifically is for changes to the transportation ADM, as well as eligibility for those transportation payments. So you might want to take a look at that one.
House Bill 1235, this is a change to North Dakota Century Code 4.1-01-27, introduced by Representative Greenike. This is going to affect cities with population of less than 1,500 residents. They are now eligible for road and bridge improvement grants, which includes infrastructure from the Ag Department to accommodate value-added agricultural businesses that are within the city limits. This program creates opportunities for families, family farmers and ranchers. Great thing. I love our family farmers and our ranchers out there. This is $10 million of grant money that is made available this last biennium. $15 million will be made available this next biennium. So again, it's a program that has been introduced in the past, and they are continuing this forward. So make sure you take a look at that. Let's support our farmers and ranchers out there. We all need to make sure that we've got safe, secure, and reliable food sources. The next one I'll cover, HB 1281, North Dakota Century Codes 57, sections 43.1-03.3. and 43.2-04.5 and 43.3-03.1. This was introduced by Representative Randy Pyle. And this is also regarding fire districts and fire departments certified under North Dakota Century Code 18-04-02. They are now entitled to a refund from the tax commissioner of taxes paid for motor vehicle fuel purchased and special fuel purchased, plus aviation fuel purchased. So again, another bill, take a look at where we are tax exempting these fire departments and these rural fire departments out there who are providing these necessary services to keep us safe. So make sure you're looking into that. Consult with your legal counsel to ensure that you are staying on top of those changes.
All right, House Bill 1307. This affects Century Code 40-05.1-06 and 40-4907. You might recognize those as the municipal code for cities and for park districts. So this was introduced by Representative Casper, and basically it says that if a city is operating under a home rule charter, they may now set their own signature thresholds for nominating petitions for candidates for city offices. The way it's currently under law is you had to have that number that you needed was based on 10% of people that voted in the last election based on the number of positions that were being run for. And so it was a calculation that you had to come up with. And sometimes, depending on whether that was a presidential election, it could be a much higher number than at other times. And so this now gives those, again, those cities that are operating under home rule charter to be able to set their own threshold number for how many signatures they want to have to make people get in order to run for city office. And likewise, a board of park commissioners can adopt the same signature threshold that the city did for their nominating petition. So hopefully this will make it easier to get names on the ballot for people to run. That is basically what the intent was.
And we want to wish Representative Casper a continued speedy recovery. We hope all the things are going well for him, and we wish him and his family, good health, and hopefully he gets back to serving his district soon. House Bill 1369. This is a bill that's going to affect North Dakota Century Code 15.1. The prime sponsor on this was Representative Pat Heinert. This is going to affect school districts. And what this bill does is it makes changes to the baseline funding and determinations of state aid in a variety of areas. So any school districts out there, make sure that you're reviewing this, consulting with your legal counsel to ensure that these changes are properly implemented.
House Bill 1476, which will affect North Dakota Century Code 15.1-02, also for school districts. So this one gives the Department of Public Instruction the authority to develop and maintain a system for tracking the assessment of buildings, including the construction, the repairs, modification, and maintenance recommended for each school. Now, again, this is set up as they've been given the authority and they may do this. I don't know to what extent the Department of Public Instruction is going to delve into this area, but every 4 years, DPI, or Department of Public Instruction, may document the inventory of buildings, including the type, the original construction year, facility additions, and the square footage. They may also collect regularly conducted assessments that are done by the school districts of each building, including the exterior and interior of the building, doors, windows, fire systems, components of heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical, security systems, and handicap accessibility features. All the school buildings in the school districts across the state, and noting what the numbers are, the conditions, state of repair, all of that information could be now in one place.
Excellent. The next bill that we want to cover, House Bill 1482. This is related to county, city, school districts, and park districts. It was introduced by Representative Wagner. This bill is 7 pages. It does affect several sections of North Dakota Century Code 15.1-07-03, North Dakota Century Code 21-03-04, and Century Code 21-03-11. This makes changes under the ballot measures to borrow money, issue municipal obligations or bonds, or increase the school district's limit of indebtedness must now be set for the same date as a statewide primary or general election. Special elections will no longer aware. Let's see here. Hold on. All right. I think my mic muted there for a second. Again, I just want to reiterate so that these requests for ballot measures to borrow money, issue bonds, they must now be set as the same date as statewide primary and general elections. Special elections will no longer be allowed under this section of code. So I believe what, as I interpret this, the legislature, they want greater participation from the public in deciding whether or not to take on this debt and cause this impact to the local community. So again, it's a good bill to be aware of. The next bill we want to talk about, House Bill 1524. This makes changes to 54-40.1. This was introduced by Representative Munson, and this relates to regional planning councils. The Commerce Department was authorized to award some grant monies to regional planning councils to support local and regional implementation of state-authorized programs and initiatives in order to attract and leverage public or private investment in local and regional areas of the state. These state-authorized programs include housing, regional workforce, rural catalysts, and local food and grocery, to name a few. Again, it's a good bill to go out there and be made aware of, especially for those regional planning councils, and look at the Department of Commerce for additional guidance. So that's House Bill 1524.
House Bill 1549, which adds to North Dakota Century Code 12-44.1. This was introduced by Representative Clemine, and this has an effect on correctional facilities. So the Department of Corrections shall establish a correctional facility grant committee. So this is the creation of a new committee, and they are charged with several items. One, they are to establish criteria for grant applications. They're to establish the policies for implementing the grants. They're to administer the grants to the correctional facilities, and they're to provide annual reports to the Department of Correction regarding the status of the grant program. So it's a streamlined way of facilitating all grants that go out to the correctional facilities, what they're used for, how they're used, things of that nature. These grants given must prioritize those correctional facilities without an existing reentry educational, counseling, or other evidence-based programs. Grants may also be awarded to support access to culturally responsive treatment alternative programs. So I'm sure you'll be seeing information about that coming up as they get this up and running.
All right, the next bill we want to talk about, House Bill 1597. This was introduced by Representative Heinert. This is for rural ambulance districts, those with less than 800 runs a year. So we're talking about the smaller ambulance districts. The Department of Health and Human Services shall provide state financial assistance to each eligible ambulance service pursuant to the new calculation. Maximum total grant calculation for each operation may not exceed $255,000. So again, for those rural ambulance districts out there with less than 800 runs a year, this is a program that you want to keep your eye on, and hopefully the Department of Health and Human Services will get additional information out there soon. The next bill that we want to cover, Senate Bill 2006. This is the Aeronautics Commission Appropriation Bill. And the section of that we want to bring to your attention is regarding airports. The Aeronautics Commission was given $20 million from the Airport Infrastructure Fund to provide grants to airports to maintain, of course, our airport infrastructure, which is vital for commerce and transportation. So Senate Bill 2006, that's another good bill for all of those airport authorities to be out there paying attention to.
Yeah, and actually, I want to add something into Josh's comment. It actually should have been in my notes, but it didn't end up getting in there for whatever reason. That $20 million from the Airport Infrastructure Fund, so where that money actually comes from, that Airport Infrastructure Fund, that's one of the buckets of the Prairie Dog funding that comes in. And so because of that, there's a time lag. It's actually one of the buckets at the end of the line. And so Aeronautics Commission doesn't know if they're going to get that money until almost the end of the biennium. So this $20 million here was actually from last biennium that they just received in February of this year, or this last biennium. So they now have it available and they got carryover authority to be able to give that out in this upcoming year. So that's kind of, there's that time lag there because of that Prairie Dog funding. Now in this current session that just ended, they were actually given $30 million for grants, 20 of it again from the infrastructure fund and 10 million of just other state grant money. The thing with that is that they don't know, nobody knows if that bucket will fill until a point down the road, because it's all based on the oil extraction tax and how much that is, which is based on the number of wells, the price per barrel, all those factors that come in determine how quickly those buckets fill. And so that while it's been appropriated, if the money doesn't come in, then the 20 million for this upcoming biennium may not be there. But they did just get the 20 million in February from this last biennium, so that is available to give out.
So hopefully they continue drilling, they keep our production rates high, and our oil prices are stable for those funds to be available.
So next is Senate Bill 2012, which is the Department of Transportation's appropriation bill. And out of the Flexible Transportation Fund, they will allocate a portion of the funds for grants in non-oil producing counties to the benefit of road and bridge maintenance and projects in those counties and cities, plus other infrastructure was also added to that definition of what those monies can be used on. Now, it actually defines what a non-oil producing county means, and it doesn't mean no oil, it just means minimum oil. So if you produce less than, on the average, 10 million barrels, you are considered a non-oil producing county. So priority for that money will be given to projects that match federal or private funds, because anytime that they can use state money to leverage other money coming in, they're always going to give priority to that. And also projects that improve roadways that serve as local corridors.
Oh, good bill. Thanks, Dan. The next one we want to talk about, Senate Bill 2018. This is the Department of Commerce's appropriation bill. And there may be several areas within this section, this bill, that are applicable to many different local governments. It's a very comprehensive appropriation bill. But what we want to point out is Section 16. And the Department of Commerce was given $600,000 for grants to support regional planning councils. And so if you are a regional planning council, that is a section of code that you want to make sure that you are aware of, and what those process procedures are to obtain that funding to support your organization.
Next, with Senate Bill 2033. So this directly affects ambulance districts, but it could also indirectly affect counties and cities where those ambulance districts are located. And this is a change. This is actually an addition to North Dakota Century Code 23.27.2. And within the Department of Health and Human Services, there is now a newly created distressed ambulance service program. And this program, what they can do is they can suspend or revoke a distressed ambulance services license. So they define in there a distressed ambulance service as one that meets one of three criteria. They either fail to comply with federal or state law regulations, they are intending to cease operation, or there is a substantial likelihood that they will fail to respond to requests for service. So if any of those three factors come up, this committee, or this service, if you will, can now designate you as a distressed ambulance service. So what happens then is that the Department of Health and Human Services will assign a coordinator to that ambulance service who will help design, implement, and monitor an emergency medical services plan. And that's all done also considering input from, again, as I mentioned, the county and the city governments where this ambulance district is located, as well as any adjacent ambulance services that might need to be called on to help provide service or coverage. And again, this all goes back to the safety of when somebody dials 911 and they have an emergency, is somebody there to respond?
And we really want to make sure that we're looking out for our rural districts. North Dakota is a rural state, and so this is a great support piece for those ambulance districts to ensure that we've got continuity of service.
And actually, what you mentioned that at the same time that while this has come into place, as has been mentioned earlier by Josh, there are some other bills that are allocating additional resources to those ambulance services to hopefully not have them end up in this program.
Yes. But it's great that we've got this kind of a backstop ready to help and support our rural communities who do some great work across the state of North Dakota. The next bill we want to talk about, Senate Bill 2074. This makes some changes to North Dakota Century Code 57-51.1-07.7. This was introduced at the request of State Treasurer Tom Beadle. This is going to affect cities with a population of less than 1,000 residents. The reporting requirements for cities receiving the municipal infrastructure or the prairie dog funding that Dan's talked about previously, these fund grants has been waived for all cities with a population of less than 1,000 residents. This report was required to be submitted to the State Treasurer's Office on a biennial basis. Part of the reason was that this was waived is because they are relying on the Auditor's Office for our annual financial review process and the review of these expenditures to ensure that they are being used appropriately. So that's where we are very excited about the changes that we've made with our small government review, the online queue, working with local governments to really make sure that we are staying on top of providing those value-added services to communities across the state.
As a fun fact of that, I found out when listening to the testimony on this bill that of the 353 cities in the state, 301 of them have a population of less than 1,000.
A lot of small communities out there.
Yes. So moving on to Senate Bill 2177. This was introduced by Senator Thomas, and this is for counties. Counties will receive a new annual distribution from the state treasurer, which must be placed in a separate special revenue fund. Remember, we talked about those when I was talking about back at the review process, but called the Infrastructure Development Fund. And it's not to exceed $500,000 in total for all counties. But these funds come from the state portion of sales, gross receipts, and use tax on eligible, tangible personal property purchase to construct new or expand, upgrade, or replace existing animal agriculture facilities located in the county with a taxable value of at least $300,000 purchased during the calendar year. So based on how much large dollar purchases of those items in your county is most likely going to affect how much of this you get back from the treasurer's office. So these monies from this fund can only be spent by the counties for infrastructure projects near animal agriculture facilities located in the county, or they can be given to townships for road projects near those animal agriculture facilities in the township. And an animal agriculture facility is defined as a building or structure where an animal is kept, handled, housed, or bred.
All right. And I know we are coming close to time here, Dan, so I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit because we still have several we want to get through. Senate Bill 2180 affects North Dakota Century Code 44-04. It was introduced by Senator Paulson. This is going to affect county, city, school districts, park districts, or water resource districts. Every regular meeting must include an opportunity for an individual to provide public comment. Public comment may only be limited by time per speaker. Total time for public comment or both by agenda topic of the current agenda and at least one preceding meeting. The local governments shall develop a policy regarding public comment rules for regular meetings.
And Senate Bill 2219, this is for public libraries. This is a very simple one. And in order to be eligible to receive the grant for state aid from the state library, and hopefully if you are a public library, you are applying for these, A new eligibility requirement has been added, and that is the annual report, which is required under Section 6 of their code, must have been submitted for the prior year. And hopefully that doesn't affect any of you, since you would have already submitted your report. Moving on from there, Senate Bill 2228 was introduced by Senator Myrdal, and this is for cities. The Department of Commerce was given $1 million in funding to continue, so they had this last time and this is continuing it, the Rural Grocery Store Sustainability Grants. And priority is to be given to supporting existing rural grocery stores to keep them open, but funding may also be available for feasibility costs related to reopening a grocery store in a community without one if there are additional monies left over. And of course, it's important to keep those grocery stores open in those rural areas.
Kind of the lifeblood of those rural communities. Senate Bill 2251, North Dakota Century Code 54-10-27. This was introduced by Senator Cleary. This is the auditor's office. This was kind of our cleanup bill that we introduced. And there's a couple of sections I want to bring to your attention. Occupational boards. Last session we were working on this. It didn't quite get through, but this session we wanted to make sure that we got their threshold to the same level as everybody else. It was 200,000, but now we got them to the same threshold as everyone else at $2 million in annual revenue. They can still obtain an audit if they wish, but if they are under that $2 million threshold, they can submit those small government reviews to us. The other part of that bill that I'd like to just talk on briefly is open records requests. So we made a change through this process, the referral of open records requests. So we are a custodian of other entities' records. We may possess some of these, but these are not our records. And so one of the changes we sought to have changed is that if we get requests for those records, we want to refer those back to you so that those citizens can work through you to obtain those necessary records and not directly get them from the auditor's office. So I think that's going to be a good change and increase participation. But again, referral of those open records requests back to the local governments for them to fill those requests.
Senate Bill 2254, introduced by Senator Boucher. Again, for cities, Department of Transportation was given $2 million to provide grants to fixed route city paratransit transportation providers. So whereas the other bill I talked about earlier was for those that are not your normal city bus routes, this one actually is for those normal city bus routes, but their vehicles are also equipped that they can capable of servicing individuals with disabilities in their community. So it's kind of the flip side to the other one.
The next one, Senate Bill 2299. This made some changes to the State Auditor's Office section of Code 5410. This was introduced by Senator Paulson, and it relates to water districts. Water districts identified in our code has been more specifically defined to include those water districts created under North Dakota Century Code 61-16. Additionally, rural water districts created under 61-35 has also been added to our section of code for those political subdivisions that have submitted or that have to submit their audit report or annual financial report or the annual reviews for less than $2 million to our office for review. Since the majority of water resource districts, rural water resource districts already receive an audit and submit to our office for review, this change will have minimal impact on most of them. There is no cost for either the review of this report or the review of the annual financial report.
Senate Bill 2308, this affects boards. So North Dakota Century Code 54-07. There is a newly created Boards Review Task Force within the governor's office, and they're going to be charged with looking for inefficiencies and duplication of responsibilities within the occupational and professional boards. This task force will then make recommendations to the next legislature regarding minimizing and streamlining government operations through the consolidation and or elimination of boards.
Senate Bill 2358. This was introduced by Senator Dever. It affects North Dakota Century Code 11-28.3-06, and this is regarding ambulance districts. What this bill allows is for board members may now receive compensation for serving on the board at a rate to be set by the board of directors.
Senate Bill 2390, introduced by Senator Wanzek. This affects cities. A Rural Catalyst Committee is created to assist communities in the state with the quality of improvement and economic development projects. The committee will develop guidelines for the Rural Catalyst Grant Program, most of that money which will come from the Department of Commerce, including eligibility criteria, reporting, and matching requirements. Recipients must provide at least $1 of matching funds, either in cash or in kind, from non-state resources for every dollar received. So it's a one-to-one match. Grant funding may be awarded for projects that will address a critical need in the areas of community and economic development, education, health, and wellness, or for the purpose of reopening rural grocery stores. Again, those are important. In a rural community with populations of less than 4,500 residents. The maximum grant award is $500,000, and at least 50% of the total grant funds allocated must go to communities with populations of less than 1,500 residents.
All right, and Senate Bill 2395, this affects North Dakota Century Code Title 43, introduced by Senator Hogan. It did create a new chapter to Title 43, and this is related to boards. But by July 31st of 2026 and 2027, on forms developed by the Department of Labor, each board shall report data on the number of licenses granted, number of licenses denied, and the number of licenses not issued within the 10-day timeline, and the reason for the delay of issuance if past the 10-day timeline. So it sounds like the legislature wants a little more oversight on some of those boards that issue licenses.
Yep.
Then that's our list, Dan.
That concludes it.
We went right up to time. I don't know if we have time for Q&A.
And again, even with in the Q&A section, as we said at the beginning, a lot of these, we don't have the answers. These bills just passed. The agencies themselves probably don't have the answers right away as they look to see how they're going to implement these new pieces of legislation.
Because those appropriation bills will take effect July 1st. Some of those policy bills, unless there's an emergency clause, will take effect August 1st.
Right.
So these are probably still in the works by a lot of these different organizations and state agencies to implement. All right, I think we kick it back to Pearl.
I think so.
All right.
All right, thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't already signed up for our next month's session, I highly encourage you to do so. We will be having Deanna Ment from North Dakota Public Finance Authority, and she'll be walking you through the process of how to apply for a state revolving fund loan. Additionally, this session was recorded and the link will be sent out next week along with a short survey. Please take the survey and give us some feedback. In that survey, you'll be able to suggest if there are any topics that you want covered. We will do our best to meet those needs. And let's see. So yeah, I'll be sending that out next week. So we'll have the recorded session, the link to that, it'll be on YouTube, a link to the survey, and then as well as the notes that came along with this if you want those for reference as well. And sign up for updates from the Office of Good Government. If we have any big things that come through our office that we want to notify you about, we will send that out to our mailing list. And if you have any questions at all, please contact the Office of Good Government. If you have any questions that come up after listening to this, just send them to our office. You can email us at ogg@nd.gov. And we hope to see you at the next session. Thank you.